Thank you, everybody, for joining us again. Really excited to have you. David and I have been doing these series and getting some good feedback thus far. So I really welcome any comments, whether it's directly, private messages, on LinkedIn, on YouTube. We'd love to hear from you so we can continue to evolve this into further topics and conversations here. So without further ado, again, having David Cheatham here, principal consultant and founder at Transform Communications LLC, myself, Jason Marsdale, Director of Strategy with Brown Superstores.
Fantastic. Well, Jason, it's great to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you again. Appreciate the time.
Happy to do it. And we promised ourselves and the viewers that we would speak to culture change, which in my change management course at Rutgers, I call that the boogeyman of change management. But we're going to demythologize it, if that's a word. We're going to see what it is for what it's worth, and shine light on it and so forth, and do that in quick order. And then I may have a couple of examples to share, and of course we'll have our usual conversation. I know you've got some points to cover, and but this is a real value add, I think, component when we talk about the drivers of change. We talk about leadership and communications. We talk about stakeholder management. Many people think of culture change, of the types of change, as the most difficult. But this is a good news episode. So I first want to say that we should reframe our understanding of culture to what it really is, and that is sustained behavior. Culture is the way we do things around here. That's the best definition I know. It's the way we do things around here, and that's behavior. Now, what a lot of leaders and change sponsors do, it's intuitive, but it's a bit backwards, is that they start with the idea that we want to inculcate or promote or instill the values. We have values that we want to run this organization by. They could be from our origin story, our founders. It could be new values we want to pick up because of the marketplace changes. Acquisitions, merger and acquisitions. We're going to touch upon that in a couple of minutes. And so basically their thinking is, if we change the values, that'll change the attitude of our stakeholders, not just employees, and that will create behavior change.
Yeah.
So again, value to attitude to behavior. That's the boogeyman. Because how do you change values? Well, it's not because you put a poster in the break room that says these are our 5 values. It really is backwards. So let's reinforce what research shows us, and that is you change behavior first. Changing the behavior changes the attitude toward what you're doing, to the work, and from that becomes a value. We have a value of prompt customer service. We have a value of getting back with a vendor within 30 minutes. I think about when Domino's Pizza rolled out in the day. It was 30 minutes or free. That was their brand promise, right? Yeah. Those are actions. Those are actions. We're going to call the customer back. We're going to follow up with an email. We're going to have a personal relationship with our financial institution. These are all behaviors that together become a culture. So my headline coaching for this segment is that the bogeyman is not as awful as you think when you cut on the lights. Culture is about changing behavior. And when we reframe it that way, then we see behavior, well, we can change behavior. What does that really mean? It means we can model the behavior. We can measure the behavior. We can reinforce the behavior. And get those metrics. So we know how to do that. We know how to incentivize behavior. So the good news for us all is that culture change is really changing that behavior. And there are many great tools and processes to do that, reward systems, recognition systems to do that. And once people are acting that way, you start to change the value and the beliefs. That I believe in what this company is doing. subscribe to the values because I'm literally living it. I'm doing it every day. Uh, and that brings us to mergers and acquisitions, where you might have organizations that are doing things differently. They have different behaviors. Maybe those behaviors are warranted because they're in different markets, have different products and services. Okay. But you start, when you have a merger acquisition, you start with the behaviors and you say, okay, of the behaviors that are going on now in both companies, what do we want, of course, to do more of, and what do we want to do less of? Or do we need people to change their behaviors in certain other ways? And there the virtuous cycle starts. Because then again, we can incentivize it, we can model it, we can track it, measure it, and report back and say, are we really behaving the way we want? Because again, if we are, then we have the culture we want.
It's interesting, just kind of hearing some of the examples that you're putting out there, and the whole thing that culture is sustained behavior, and the reinforcement of it. I guess in previous experiences, as I think back to it, there would be a lot of talk about culture, but it was a little more ambiguous and it was loosely defined. It was more like, hey, I don't know if they're a culture fit, or hey, this isn't good for our culture. Uh, what are some of the examples you mentioned, practices, when it comes to spelling out what our culture is, or what their culture is, rather?
Now that's great. And so I want to give you two examples, and they're very different, but they are connect. One is I was part of a large merger, a Fortune 50 telecom company acquired a smaller internet-based company um, for the strategic assets for a new opening a new market. It was a new market on behalf of the larger organization. They wanted the skills, they wanted the market share, they wanted the market presence. They needed the intellectual capital, uh, and and they were very different cultures in the sense that were facing different customers, and their subject matter experts had a different focus.
Mhm.
So that's behavior. But it was a but they're but they were coming from a shared understanding of customer service. They were coming from a shared understanding of leading in technology, in this case, of people who were highly skilled, who understood that engineering was going to drive this company, not sales, for example, because they both had a heritage of that, and that's the way they behaved in the marketplace. That's what was reinforced to employees to physically show that the leadership of both organizations was together going forward. Uh, we put together a listening tour and a speaking tour uh, so that both of the CEOs, the legacy CEO and the current CEO, could physically be out with employees, but other stakeholders as well, investors, going out to the financial services community and so forth. And that was powerful, and that showed that they were literally using the same messaging. They were saying this is the value that these two organizations can bring, which is greater together than separate, and so forth. Now, does that mean that there were people in different roles? Of course, there were, and so forth. But again, to take the folks who had that particular expertise that the larger organization needed, and to go forward with what was working, but of course give them additional resources for things that needed to amplify what they're doing right, but also to be able to make a turn and do things better in certain categories. So we were able to position it with the smaller company, the one that we acquired, that we're going to give you more resources to do the things that you do best. And these are the behaviors that the larger company, the parent company, has. And that's easy because, again, culture is behavior. So it's easy to show behaviors. We can show our attitude toward employees and the community and other stakeholders because we have not only case studies, but we have community involvement. And of course, the whole social media aspect. These are our people, and they are out and they're proud of what they're doing, and they're sharing it, and they're going to conferences and conventions, and plugged into the to very interesting communities of interest and practice. So our social media and technology in general have made it easier than ever to be able to point to the behaviors and say, this is working for us, and we're going to model this going forward. And that, again, can be measured as part of performance review and such. So that's an example of a very different example, but using that same fundamental aspect of behavior change. Is a client that I'm working with, and the CEO puts out a monthly all hands message. So this is an employee message, and he's very good at it. He tells stories, and we're going to have a segment, I'm sure, coming up on the power of narrative and strategic storytelling, which is fundamental to making change and sustaining it. And we'll have some fun with that. So he typically weaves in very concrete stories of what employees are doing right and the recognition that they're getting externally and internally. And his messages are typically woven around 2 or 3 of those key stories. We wanted to change things up a bit. And so I suggested an employee quiz where the monthly message was, take this 10-point quiz, this 10-question quiz, which is going to help you to see all the great things we're doing, all the great feedback we're getting, the commendations, the progress we're making on our numbers. And you're going to have to dig a little for it. You're going to have to go on the website and dig for it and so forth. But I'll share you those resources. And by the way, I'm going to incentivize you. So we're going to have a program of incentivizing a certain number of employees who get a certain percentage correct out of these 10 questions. So it makes it fun. And again, it encourages people to see in black and white the good stuff and who among their peers and colleagues is doing the good stuff, and not just because the person at the top of the house says, oh, good job. And I think that's rolling out as we speak this month, and I'm excited about the input for that. So that's another way, and it costs, as I often tell my clients, it doesn't cost any more money.
Yeah. What are they using to administer that?
Oh, very simple, a Survey Monkey.
Okay.
It's a simple Survey Monkey, 10 questions, and look and see literally what we're doing right, and reinforce it in your own mind, because you're going to be validating it for yourself. You know, you're again not just being told, even though of course it's accurate, but it's a little different when you're more invested. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm expecting a high response rate for it, and then of course we'll follow up. We'll follow up with a debrief to reinforce the key messages, to applaud the folks, to recognize the people who won the prizes. Again, fun, a little different, but getting at the same thing, modeling the behavior and showing that everyone can contribute.
Now, I love the concept of it. Is there, or has there ever been in your experience a time where you're taking an initial survey and then comparing it to, let's say, months down the road, year down the road, whatever that timeline is, to see where the organization has come from the standpoint of like an average? You know, have we progressed as a company to having, you know, closer to the mindset and the culture that you're driving?
Well said. Exactly, Jason. So I've done exactly that. You start with a baseline survey. That could be prior to the M&A work. It could be early on into the M&A exercise. I've done it both ways, and then and that's again about behavior. What are you seeing? Or this is what we intended to happen in the first 6 months, first 12 months, because we made a strategic choice to have this merger or make this other important business decision. And what are you seeing? I mean, in other words, you tell us if we're meeting our own goals from your perspective. And again, most of these people are more customer facing. They're closer to the customer than leadership is. And so they give us a great pulse of the organization. So, and what I do in that case is I have a certain core questions that have to do with behavior and how things are changing. And then, but I'm also able to add additional questions that come up in the course of business in those 6 or 12 months. Then we redo the survey, and we can literally show the metrics. We can say, yes, we've gone from 25% of the population was confident in this strategic change, and now 45% are confident, or 75. What, just throwing out some numbers. And then of course we make that all transparent. We make all the results transparent across the organization, and then we commit to continuing to do it. It's not a one-off. But we can make adjustments. We can do a course correction. Maybe we do more of these more rapidly because of other changes. Maybe we slack off and do, or scale back and do fewer. But again, we keep it public in that way, and then we have leadership speak to it. What does it really mean for them? Because we talked in an earlier segment about leaders making meaning for employees and other stakeholders. And this is a great way to do that. As my client I mentioned earlier with the quiz, what are our leaders, what meaning are they making of the input from employees? And crucially, are they willing to change based on the results? How many times have we both taken surveys and we probably never knew the outcome, the full results, and we maybe never knew if it was acted on? And then we have survey fatigue, right? People don't want to complete surveys. Why should they? So of course, if you're going to put out a survey, you better well put out the results and what do you do about it? And maybe you can only do 3 of the 10 things that the survey points you to for financial reasons, logistical reasons, the economy. But by gosh, you do those 3, and you back to the why behind the decision we talked about earlier. Okay, we're going to do these things that we can. These we're going to put aside, long term, short term, and people will give you the benefit of the doubt if you come out in that way. Otherwise, it's, well, what did you do with the results? Why did I waste my time? I saw one of these 10 things. Why didn't you do the other 9? Oh, you're going to survey me again in 6 months. And then you have to wonder whether the results are valid, because future surveys are not, don't have the buy-in.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent point.
To a short question, but I hope it.
No, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think I've been on the receiving end quite a few times of doing a variety of surveys, and you're wondering, like, are we wasting our time, or what's going to come out of this? So, even going back to the comment you made about the monthly all hands message, to be able to incorporate some of the results and making sure people understand, hey, A, your voice is being heard. B, this is what we're doing about it. And C, broadcasting some of the consistent messaging you're getting, because maybe there's employees that thought about it and didn't put it in the survey. And that's been a challenge that I think I've personally witnessed, is getting employees to understand that the purpose of the surveys is to get their unfiltered responses so that improvements can be made to issues that maybe they're not so obvious on the surface, but they're there. And we want them to feel like their voice is heard and that their opinions are just as important as anybody else's. And so trying to break down those barriers, it's a whole other topic I'm sure we can get into, but right. It just brings me back to some of those previous experiences that I've had.
Very good.
Awesome. Well, I think this was a great segment. Again, I really enjoy these quick bursts, and being able to kind of transport back into my days of being a student of yours. It's always nice to hear.
Well, it's great. So, it's always great to collaborate with you, Jason, and I'm excited about some other topics. And as we always say, we're excited for folks to contact us through social media and suggest topics in change management, because we're all in the business of change management. Every business I know is in the business of change management. As I tell my students, where would Apple be without the latest iPhone?
For sure.
So we actually all do, as I said, we all embrace change. Just a question of how can you make it change that you want and not that's imposed upon you. And
Great.
so excited for more.
For sure. And I'll put you on the spot. I don't know if you want to do a 30-second elevator pitch at Transform Communications. I know you've been doing these for a while, and we've talked about content, but we haven't gotten too much into Transform Communications.
Well, I appreciate that. Transform Communications is a shop we set up about 10 years ago. The focus is on strategic messaging and organizational change management. That's across industries. And so we focus on enhancing the effectiveness of major change in an organization, such as product introductions, leadership change, the bogeyman culture change, mergers and acquisitions, those important key decisions that are hard to reverse, that have a huge financial impact, that affect multiple stakeholders. And again, we work across industries to do this, and we can work on any aspect of the continuum of change management. We can come into an engagement from the very beginning, or be brought into any point along the continuum of deciding to make the change, to implementing it, and then again back to surveying, seeing whether the results were achieved. We work as a standalone shop when needed. In other words, we can be the consulting positive turbulence, as we call it, in an organization as a self-contained unit. We can also embed in an organization if it has its own project management team or change management team. Many sophisticated organizations have both. So again, we can be additional subject matter experts, or we can basically own the project itself. And that makes great variety, which is what I really enjoy doing, and being able to work with many different subject matter experts across the country, because we tap into the leading experts in the particular industry. So for example, when we worked with a major orthopedic firm, I tapped into 2 change management experts who specifically worked in healthcare and who are nationally recognized. And they came on board for that particular change initiative, so that we were immediately up to speed about the particular issues of that industry. So that makes an exciting ride for us.
That's awesome. Well, you heard it. You heard it here, folks. So if David has piqued your interest, Transform Communications LLC, you can check them out on LinkedIn. I'll be sure to put your details in the YouTube videos as well, so people can check out your website and go from there. But thank you again. It's always been a pleasure to have these quick get-togethers and record some sessions here, and looking forward to continuing this.
That's great. Thanks again, Jason.